Tashara Parker Show. The internet's favorite cousin. A different perspective on news, culture, and hot topics. The Tashara Parker Show.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. I'm going to give you a few minutes to get on in here. Thank you so much for joining us for day 4 of the Tashara Parker Show. I can't believe I am saying that. This has been a long time coming, and I know a lot of you have been waiting to see what we were going to come up with. Today is February 5th, 2026. I cannot believe we already in the month of February, okay? Happy Black History Month. I'm going to remind you every single day of this shortest month of the year. Happy Black History Month. Day 4 again of our soft launch of the show, and we've had some amazing guests, some amazing interviews. I have been looking at all of your feedback, understanding how this works. YouTube is a completely new platform for me. So for those of you, my Facebook family that are joining the conversation, make sure you continue to log in, comment, share the video. I always remind you, go and send us emails if you have folks that we should interview and folks that you feel like will be a good fit for the show. You can email us media@tasharaparker.com. with that feedback. You know what? Also, I saw some comments and some folks were asking about sponsorships and ads and all that kind of stuff. We'll get there. Okay. We are absolutely soft launching, but you know, if you want to reach out to us about that, media@Tashara Parker as well. As I always say, make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. The more you like, the more you subscribe, the more you comment, it will help other folks see that this video is live and really help other folks find out about the independent journalism and the work that we are doing as someone who was in legacy media for many, many years, a decade plus at this point. So just make sure you like and subscribe, youtube.com/Tashara Parker. That is how people stay informed about our work and find our page. Plus your support, you know, it helps. Hey, Shonda, good morning to you. Yes, happy Black History Month. She says 365. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Appreciate you tapping in. You guys, today we're going to talk about private school vouchers, and I'm going to get there in just a second. But again, make sure you are sharing this video. I am actually going to go and share it myself. So hold on one second, because I need to make sure y'all are aware of what is going on. How's everybody's morning? I know I'm a late morning coffee drinker, and I'm drinking my coffee right now. So how's everybody's morning? Hold on. And I don't know about y'all, but I love our little jingle coming into this, okay? Oh, look at there. I see you guys. Simply Purple, thank you so much for tapping in, saying, I need my coffee. Let me know where you guys are watching from. Shonda says she is moving over to YouTube. That is exactly what we want you to do. Thank you so much. Ice macchiato. Oh, I'm guessing I know what your favorite drink is. Good morning. I love what you're doing with the channel. Thank you so much. Look, we're trying to keep the folks informed. This is a very important year, and I feel like everybody needs to be tapped in and needs to know what is happening. We're already getting some questions. Deborah Jackson, good morning to you. Carla Marshall saying, can students who go to public schools apply for vouchers, and what ages are the vouchers for? Give us a minute. Let me go ahead and get to my intro so that we can get started here, okay? So if you guys don't know anything about private school vouchers, we're going to talk about it, okay? More than 20,000 families applied for private school vouchers in Texas on the first day of the application opening. That is according to the Texas Comptroller. Now, it's the first step in a state program that'll launch next school year, which allows families to receive taxpayer dollars to send their children to private school, or for those who educate their children at home. Now, if you have no idea what we're talking about, that's why we are here today, to hopefully provide some clarity on the $1 billion that is up for grabs But really, I think a lot of folks don't understand like how we got here. And I want to be clear, these vouchers that are available follows years of conversations in the legislature. Democrats and some rural Republicans have argued that the program would harm public schools who are already struggling. We knew that, right? Now, this was reported by the Texas Tribune, and we know this public schools are a major employer of working families and a resource center for many Texas students who live in low-income households. I was one of those students, and I am a proud, very proud public school graduate, okay? Of course, Republicans and Governor Abbott insist that the vouchers and public education can coexist. They said this even as other states show these vouchers have largely benefited families with the means already, and who, mind you, are already had their kids enrolled in private schools. My purpose for today's show is to say this. Yes, the money is there. Do we let the money just sit there and not even attempt to access it? Or do we see who really is benefiting from this program? So my goal today is to walk you through how we got here and what you need to know. And from one of her videos, I know this young lady has the information. State Senator Molly Cook out of Houston is joining us on the Tashara Parker Show this morning. Senator Cook, good morning to you.
Tara, how are y'all doing? Excited to
Doing
be here.
well. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. I saw a lot of the comments on your page, and some of those comments, one person said, terrible policy that does not make Texas better off. Another commenter from a self-identified educator saying, I've been a special educator for 31 years. This makes me so sad. Sending more money to private schools without regulation and adding more unfunded mandates will further ruin public schools. This is so wrong. Senator Cook, I want to start with this. How did we get to this point?
That's a really great question. And I heard you wishing everyone a very happy Black History Month, which is so exciting. And we love leap year extra. But unfortunately, the roots of vouchers go all the way back to when we desegregated schools. And really, in my opinion, the root of the idea behind vouchers has essentially not changed since then. And we can talk kind of all about how we've gotten to this point. So basically around, the 1950s, 1960s, when schools were being forced to desegregate, forced to integrate the students, white families pulled their kids out of school, found ways to get grant funding, and basically developed vouchers so that their kids could go to all white schools. We know that independent school districts were also a result of white flight. Used to in Texas, every single county had an education department. And I think there's only maybe one left in the state now, and everything is run by independent school districts. So all of this policy kind of echoes a really troubling and racist past that is frankly a troubling and racist present, in my opinion. So the more recently, the fight about vouchers came down to the governor primarying out Republicans who wouldn't vote with him on vouchers. It's pretty well established at this point that there's two really, really, really wealthy people that are not really even Texans that give millions and millions of dollars to Governor Abbott and other Republicans across the state who are pushing. And none of this is over the top. It's like it's written. You know what I mean? It's well known. They're pushing Christofascism. They want Christianity to be the prevailing religion in the state and in the country. They want a certain type of culture in Texas. And so school vouchers are a way of kind of implementing that. And of course, we know that some Republicans held out, voted their districts. They were primaried out, major funding from the governor. They were never, and most of them were not primaried out on vouchers, right? They were primaried out on other issues, kind of hysterical culture war issues. And as a result, vouchers were able to pass during this last session, and applications have just opened, so folks can start applying for the money now.
Who does this program really help first? Based on how vouchers have played out in other states, which families are best positioned to benefit right now, and who may struggle to access it?
So let me just say, we've gotten a lot of questions from our constituents and district about like, okay, even if we hate this policy, how do we get a hold of the money, right? And that I get that. Like we talk about harm reduction, people have to get their bag. Like it's very expensive out there right now. If this can make life easier for any Texan, then that is a tiny little silver lining on some really, really bad policy. But that being said, I do think it's important to say that nobody benefits, because everybody benefits from a thriving public education system. It makes us all safer. It reduces rates of crime. It makes it, it provides upward mobility for folks, especially people who historically have had, have been blocked from upward mobility, whether that's on income, race, ability. And so in my opinion, none of us benefit because we're chipping away at our public education system that is the root of our democracy and the root of a healthy society. The folks who can apply for these and get money from it, which you do not get cash in a bank account, you don't get written a check. There's kind of these middlemen. If you've ever applied for health insurance on the marketplace, it's kind of like these managed care organizations. And so the money goes like it's kind of space money goes into the account, like a Venmo account or something. And then you can spend it directly from there on things related directly to your child's education, like textbooks. So homeschoolers can qualify. They can get a couple $1,000s. Students who are currently enrolled in a private school or currently enrolled in a public school, they have to be eligible for it. Can get up to, I believe, 10,000. And then if kids have a disability of some kind, they can qualify for up to 30,000. There's all sorts of asterisks and caveats and stuff with that. But the intention, I mean, again, I think the intention of the policy is to advance Christofascism. But for the folks who, voted for this thinking that it'll help people, the intention is to try to get extra money to students with disabilities to make sure that if kids are currently attending a public school that's not meeting their needs, that they then have the opportunity to go to a private school.
Yeah. Intention and what actually happens is where we are. So I want to ask this question. And for the folks who are watching, if you have questions, no question is a silly question, it's a dumb question, you can feel free to drop it in the comments. That is why we are doing this, so that we can answer your questions more directly. If you feel like maybe there's just this, question that's kind of hanging over you, like, well, should I even care about this? What happens, Senator Cook, to public schools when families leave? If students exit public schools using vouchers, what does that mean for funding, staffing, and resources for the kids who stay behind?
So even if, in Texas, we are an attendance-based payment system, right? And so even if students are enrolled in your school, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get the money for them. They have to actually show up and attend school, which a lot of teachers and students and faculty, staff members think is problematic. We should go to an enrollment-based system instead of attendance-based. But basically, when your attendance drops, when your enrollment drops, the money goes away. And so it's very concerning also that, you think about like the kind of the ripple effect as well. So if students whose parents are able to go out and navigate this red tape and go get them a voucher, they leave, that's also one less person paying into the PTA or one less person paying into the band or the arts or whatever it is, the football team. And so you're just going to kind of see this slow depletion of students in public schools. That just means less and less and less funding, less and less and less attention. Ultimately, really fearful that we're going to see public schools close. And I think it's really important to talk about charter schools in these conversations as well. Some people hate vouchers but love charters. I think that that's a little bit incongruent. I know how people get there and I get it. It makes sense. But ultimately, all of this is a form of privatization of a public good. And all of it ultimately depletes resources for public education.
I got so many questions that I want to get to, but I want to make sure that I address some of our viewers' questions. LaShonda, a member of our channel, she says, how is this related to the current administration's account, in quotes there, or are they one and the same?
Okay, what was the question?
I'll put it back up there. How is this related to the current administration's account? And LaShonda, by the way, if you want to get in the comments and clarify, are they one in the same?
So this is this whole thing is $1 billion that was dedicated to vouchers. So there's just $1 billion sitting there. They're allowed to use a certain amount of that money to go and advertise the program. They're allowed to use a certain amount of money to actually run the program through the comptroller's office. The comptroller is a statewide elected official in Texas. That's essentially like our CFO, our accountant, more or less. But it's becoming a more and more powerful position. One of the most powerful things is overseeing this voucher program. And so there's $1 billion sitting there. Parents can go online and apply, and you'll get put into a lottery system. If enough people apply to it, the lottery system is how they'll determine who actually gets the money. If few enough people apply, then everyone would get it, right? And we know that the maximum number of students that this could ever even go to is like 165,000, something like that. And for comparison, there's almost 6 million public school students. And so you apply for it, the money goes into the account, you'll get it dispersed, I believe 3 or 4 times throughout the year. And then you can spend that money on school related stuff like tuition. It can go directly to the private school, et cetera. But yeah, this is a $1 billion that was dedicated this session. And of course, also to keep in mind, due to inflation, if it stays $1 billion next biennium, that automatically means we're reducing the number of students who could actually get the vouchers, because we know that inflation means that $1 billion is worth less in 2 years.
Correct.
Today.
And I may be overstepping here. And LaShonda, again, please correct me if I'm wrong. I saw she put in quotes Trump account in her response to us. But I was going to ask you, and maybe this is LaShonda again, get in the comments and correct me, with the big beautiful bill, the big ugly bill that was passed. Okay, I'm gonna say what I need to say. It's my show. With the bill that was passed, there was something including in there on a federal level for vouchers. Again, she may be referring to something else, but I want to ask you, do you have any context from that standpoint?
I don't right off the top of my head.
Okay.
And the big bad bill was big and bad, so it had a lot of stuff in it. This is just Texas money. So this is your Texas money. If there's stuff coming from the BBB, then that may be coming down the pipeline. Sure. And I'm not completely aware of how it would interact with this, but this is your Texas money that's dedicated.
I want to bring in this comment from Winford. He says, school choice is blowing a hole through the budgets in Iowa and Arizona. Is Texas doing anything at all to prevent that from happening here?
No, we brought that up on the floor many, many times. And again, the idea is that, like, okay, you've got a sixth grader, and that sixth grader, and by the way, if your sixth grader, has an IEP, they're going to go to a private school that actually can meet their needs, which of course they're not required to take those students. They're not required to accommodate, but say you find one, and you've got two other kids, right? And so those two kids can also get the vouchers and go to that school because they're trying to keep siblings together. And so, then you've got your sixth grader, your eighth grader, and your second grader all in school somewhere. And that second grader, right, we're looking at quite a timeline before they graduate. And so making sure that we continue that service to them, again, necessarily means that you're going to be spending more money. It necessarily means that your budget's going to blow up. And so the Legislative Budget Board, which is a nonpartisan or multi-partisan board within the state of Texas that does all of the official kind of review of all of our bills and legislation to make sure this is how much it'll cost, this is how it'll impact the budget. You got to get the money from somewhere. So they themselves said that by 2030, this could balloon to much, much more, like several $1 billion.
Wow.
And we brought this up on the floor, and basically the colleagues who voted for it just kind of ignored it and said that doesn't make any sense. Obviously, we're only putting $1 billion in. How could it become more than $1 billion?
Oh, wow. Okay. Good context provided. I do want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about students with disabilities. What protections exist for special education students, and what happens if a private school says it can't meet a child's needs?
So because of a really troubling past in our nation, the federal government created laws around what public schools have to do to make sure that we have a free, fair, safe society. And that means that they have to be able to take any student, and they have to accommodate their needs. We know that public schools can fall short. And in my opinion, a lot of that has to do with how poorly the state has funded special education, and how little special education families of students with special needs are not at the center, right, of these conversations. They're not driving the policies, unfortunately. And so that being said, though, some public schools do an amazing job, and they do take these students and they do accommodate, and they are the only safe place for people to go to get education, to grow as a person and be a part of our society, which is what we want for everyone. And private schools do not have any of those requirements. There are no laws governing that. I even have a little cheat sheet here from the comptroller's office that says, do private schools have to take my student or accommodate them? And it says, no, they just don't. And so there are some private schools out there that are already exist for students with special needs, but they're very rare, and they're usually concentrated in urban areas. And so, if we're really trying to meet the needs of the poorest and the folks who need public dollars the most, where this plan just kind of doesn't make sense for them.
Do you think that, I guess we have no choice and we're going to figure it out, but can public education and these vouchers actually coexist without it harming the other, without it harming public education? Of course, support is going to say altogether it can. From your perspective, though, what would have to be true for that to happen without harming students?
That's a great question. like, theoretically, abstractly, is something possible is an interesting philosophical
Right.
conversation.
Yeah.
We just haven't seen that in states where it's passed. We've seen that vouchers generally, when related to student outcomes who receive the vouchers, either their outcomes are no different or a little worse. We actually saw
Yeah.
private schools doing worse than the public schools did. Another thing that we see commonly with vouchers in other states and then charters in Texas all the time, I see this all the time in my district, is that students will take the voucher or students will go to a charter school and they'll end up back at their public school because the public school is what actually has all of the things that they really need. They have, the buses, they have everything. And so then that public school is on the hook for that student and educating them and caring for them, and they've lost out on the funding. So it's kind of this boomerang effect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about it too, I'm an ER nurse. And so ERs are just like public schools. We do not close our doors. We do not turn anybody away because the word emergency is on the sign. You trust that you show up at our door and we will get you what you need, regardless of your ability to pay, regardless of your any sort of status. And so that's how public school is too. And any privatization of healthcare ends up hurting us in the emergency department. It just does, one way or another. People, delay care. The haves and the have-nots get even further separated. You see it so clearly in healthcare. So I can't imagine how, taking this $1 billion, taking away public school students, forcing the public schools still to provide the IEPs, those individual education plans for students with special needs, even though those students are then going to turn around and give that voucher money to a private school. I just can't see how this doesn't ultimately harm public education in any way.
So one of the questions that I have here from one of our guests, Aisha, says, so does charter schools qualify for those vouchers? She's looking to put her daughter in a charter school.
No, and this is just for private schools or homeschooling. That's what these are for.
What are some long-term consequences you feel like folks should be on the lookout for 5 or 10 years from now? Because of course, it's a hot topic conversation right now because it's making news all over the place, but some of these things get put into policy and 5-10 years down the line, we act like we don't remember what happened 5 or 10 years ago. So what signals should families and communities look for to know whether this program is helping or hurting Texas education?
One thing that did kind of gave me a glimmer of hope when we were arguing about all this on the Senate floor. The voucher plan passed the Senate, like, I don't even know how many times, right? It was the House that bravely held off for so long. And then ultimately folks were primaried out. But what I was kind of glad to hear from some of my colleagues who voted for it was this hesitancy and a commitment to looking at data during the next session. So the 90th session will start. We only have session in the odd years for 140 days. It's like January to June, essentially. So we met in 2025 for the 89th. We'll meet in 2027 for the 90th legislative session. And I think folks will be anxious to see kind of what data do we have. Obviously, not much because the program is just now rolling out, but there was a real commitment to tracking the data. And that's because these people, they know that they're voting for a policy that doesn't work and has never worked in another state, and ultimately kind of produces bad outcomes. So I think just watching for that kind of data, there's a lot of education advocacy groups that are also going to be tracking, how many students did the public schools lose? What did that happen? What happened to the public schools in that case? If you see, I'm hesitant to tell people to look at testing scores and ratings because those scores and ratings are run by the TEA and Mike Morath is appointed by Greg Abbott. And I think that he's a failure of a public servant. So, I hesitate to tell people to look at those because I don't think they're super objective. Test scores, at some schools have gone up in my district, but it begs the question, which students left, right? Because there's a lot of homeless students who have gone missing. Like they have no record, they don't know where these kids are. And so if those students are no longer in school, but the test scores are going up, do we really think that that's like a valid measurement? So I think really watching, public school enrollment, things like, preparedness for college, preparedness for jobs out of high school, and then just really looking at like, what are literacy rates around us? Are we seeing lower levels of incarceration? I highly doubt we will. And, those are kind of the metrics that I'm looking at, those quality of life metrics, more long-term kind of quality of life measures.
What choices do families really have? Are there enough participating private schools, especially in those rural areas or underserved communities, for this to truly be a meaningful option and to truly get to those low income families? Because the words sound good, but in theory, but in action, what's actually happening?
Yeah. And again, if if you're my constituent and you reach out to my office, we will help you navigate this. We will
Yeah.
help you get the check, into your account, and do the best we can by your student, by your kiddo. Um, I do think, though, there's a few really concerning barriers for most folks that will make it difficult for these to be applicable. One is just proximity to a private school. And of course, rural comes to mind. This is Texas, so it's gonna be like a
Yeah.
3-hour drive to the nearest private
Yeah.
school, right? But in Houston, it's an hour and 10-minute drive with traffic. That's just as far if you're working
Yeah.
2 jobs. And so thinking about like proximity and geography is a huge one. Will the school have what your student actually needs? If they do need any sort of accommodation, if is the school going to be a demographic makeup where your student is comfortable? These are all things that people think about before they move somewhere and pick a public school. And so even just thinking about like what are the private schools in your area like, and are they going to meet the religious needs? We know that the comptroller is trying to discriminate right now against anything to do with Islam. And they've, of course, named CARE a terrorist organization, which is so blatantly racist. And so now Muslim students are at a disadvantage when it comes to these vouchers because they're not going to be able to go to the school of their
Can I
choice.
ask you something on that? Did they ever, and I can't remember the name of the organization specifically, that they ended up saying was under this certain group and they weren't going to allow these particular private schools to be a part of this program? So did that ever change? Because I know said they were going to make an effort to allow some of these schools to be a part of it. Or you're saying now that even some of these students that were going to these schools are not going to be able to participate?
The last update that I got was that the comptroller has requested an opinion from the AG in order to be able to discriminate against schools that are Center for American and Islamic Relations. Yeah, which is a fantastic C3 that does beautiful work.
So problematic. Oh
yeah.
my God.
And then if you look like in Houston, we have a pretty high concentration of private schools. We've got the Med Center. We're like the biggest city, the biggest county. We're the flagship for a lot in our state. And yet still the private schools cost so much money that, okay, yes, you might get $10,000 off of a $28,000 a year bill, but that doesn't mean that somebody earning a low income is going to be able to go to that school.
Okay, so you just took my next question. So how far does this money actually go? Is the roughly $10,000 enough to cover private school costs, or should families expect to pay significantly out of pocket when it comes to this?
Totally depends. But for a lot of the urban areas, private school has been costing more than $10,000 a year, especially when you start thinking about costs that layer on top of it, like uniforms or trips or, whatever it is. But it just depends, right? And I have seen comments, who are like, we're poor and we make it work to send our kids to private school. This will make a huge difference for us. I say, well, that's good news for you. I do think that it's ultimately bad news on a population level, though.
Yeah, we do have some comments here, and you may have answered some of these. This one from Drew Elizabeth. I see a lot of people saying that the money is going to the wealthy families. Have you looked at the income qualifications? Wealthy families won't qualify for these funds. You want to address that?
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of the conversation to this point has been about other states. And in other states, they didn't have those same income restrictions. So that is something that Texas did learn from other states, which is I would call it harm reduction. It's a good thing. It's harm reduction. But students with qualifying disabilities and a household income at or below 500% of the federal poverty line, which is $165,000 for a family of four. That's not $1 billion a year. You know what I mean? That's not an ultra wealthy person. It's not. It's not like an ultra poor person either, right? I think I'm frustrated because I want to see Medicaid qualification expand, right? And so we agree that this is the right place to set these voucher dollars, and yet every single other program in this entire state, you have to be basically destitute to qualify for it. But you're right that some of these things we did learn from other states. Again, though, who are the students with the absolute highest need? Is it families of four who are earning $165,000? And again, public schools can meet these needs if we will fund them. And if we will fund them in a way that allows them to be, self-determining and flexible on the local level. So, but great question.
Yeah, that brings me to my next one. This was a comment that was left by Florence. It's a little bit long. It says public schools need to be funded even if they have to have a shadow program behind it until it's graded for a few years. I guess she's specifically talking about the voucher program, but they need the money to go into public school systems. And I guess for me, a question that I would have after seeing that, what oversight exists for this $1 billion? Like, who's responsible for tracking the outcomes and preventing misuse that could potentially happen?
Ultimately, all of that falls within the comptroller's office, which is, again, like the powers of the comptroller have just been expanding and expanding.
Yeah.
And then ultimately the legislature. I mean, that the legislature it should be your like ultimate authority for all things to do with the state. And so the legislature will track some of this stuff. The comptroller will track some of this stuff. But you should also look at advocacy orgs. If you're, I'm a Democrat, so I'm going to be watching a lot of the orgs that I trust. But there are different types of organizations. So you can look, if you want to see like side-by-side opinions from the right and from the left and things like that, they'll be out there. And so I would look at advocacy orgs as well. They have less of an interest in protecting their own reputation, right? So
what's something families, Senator Cook, might overlook when deciding, for parents who instinctively might say, this isn't for me? What's one detail they should still understand, before tuning this out?
I just think, if you feel like you need it, even if I hate this policy, it's there. Go get it. I think we should have as high a possible uptake of government programs as possible. There's money on the table. And so go get it. But if you're like, I don't support this program, I think that you're right. And if you don't want to participate, that makes room for somebody else to participate, or it shows a lack of interest from the state. And either one of those things is fine to me. So I'm not sure what folks would specifically need to consider, but the Houston Chronicle, if you're in our area, has done some reporting on the private schools that are available to people. And so maybe you'd want to just go look and make sure.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what I would hope to see is a Democrat win governor, and then we immediately begin unwinding this program. Don't yank it. That's what the Trump administration does, is overnight, everything's gone. And every family who is operating under a certain assumption.
They took us through there in a year. Whew. Okay.
But we should hopefully elect a Democrat and start unwinding this program and fully funding public schools in a way that actually produces great outcomes.
Anything else, Senator Cook, you feel like folks need to be aware of overall about this voucher program? And I also have a question specifically, I'm going to get to it, but anything else you feel like folks need to be aware of?
I just always like to kind of zoom out and just remember, the governor forced, it is just true. Even if you support the program, this was absolutely forced through the legislature. Folks were worn down. This was never supported by any sort of public polling, any of the people who are voting their districts. A lot of the Republicans that Democrats really found successful working relationships with retired and left because of this. And so just remembering, like, even if you like the program, this was not a democratic process whatsoever. And at the same time that the governor is doing this, we were doing mid-decade redistricting. Again, did not come from the public. It's also part of the problem. Gerrymandering is part of the reason that you're able to then go primary out people on hysterical culture issues instead of focusing on affordability, daily life for Texans. At the same time, Republicans were able to admit this last session that there were huge issues with the abortion restrictions in the state. And when we passed the Life of the Mother bill, I think that was quite an admission of guilt. And then, of course, the state, Republicans held the line on cannabis. So I just invite folks to kind of meditate on how little power the regular voting Texan seems to have, and how much power is concentrated in the executive branch, is concentrated with these ultra wealthy donors. This is not the kind of wealth you want to aspire to. This is the kind of wealth that ruins government. And so just kind of keep all of that in mind when you're thinking about the state of political play in Texas, and when you're thinking about getting your friends out to vote.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I do have one last question for you. a lot of your colleagues have not came out and talked about the process because they hate this so much. Have you gotten any pushback for speaking out and at the very least sharing the information that folks should have?
Not at all. And I'm always going to give my opinion because I think it's important to be I'd rather where I stand and disagree with me than me try to like hide where I stand or something. So I think, just being transparent, and then everyone knows I'm a nurse. And so we operate within the systems we operate within, and I want to save lives and I want to take care of Texans and I'm here to serve. So no, not at all. And I've promised many times to spend the rest of my life trying to unwind this program, expand Medicaid, and make things make sense again.
Senator Molly Cook from my home city out in Houston. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tashara. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely. As a reminder, folks, you have until March 17th to apply for the program. Some reports, by the way, say they've already received more than 30,000 applications. You heard me mention 20,000 plus earlier, but more than 30,000 applications already. The website, for those of you who need it, I believe we have that pulled up here as well. Educationfreedom.texas.gov. Again, the information is out there. You decide how you want to use that information, but we certainly want to make sure you have what you need to make an informed decision. And what happens in the next few years is what happens in the next few years. But we definitely want you guys to be prepared and understand what we are working with right now. So again, that is the website, educationfreedom.texas.gov. And I want to remind you guys, for those of you who are watching on Facebook, I did see some of the comments. Florence, now that might have been your internet, but y'all let me know because it looks just fine on my end. I didn't see it really freezing up too bad, but it happens. Now, Florence, if you have that, what they call Temu internet, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Then sometimes it can mess up when it comes to the system or what have you. Thank you guys so much for those of you who have watched us on YouTube. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you have a smart TV, you guys, all you have to do is download the YouTube app onto your smart TV. Okay, remember to like and subscribe on our page. Make sure you share the video. Always when we go live at 11 a.m., come and comment. I hear people will say, oh, we come back and we watch it after the fact. That's great. And I love that. But if you can watch it during the show and interact, we would love that too. If you have not become a member of the Tashara Parker Show channel, please consider doing that as well to really, really support the work that we are doing here. So like, subscribe always. I hope this was informative. The goal on the Tashara Parker Show is to have some of these, you guys know we have lots of candidates come on the show, but we also have folks who are currently in office come in and talk about what is really happening beyond, maybe the 5 minutes or so they can get on a TV station, right? So that's what this is for. And we want to make sure that we're being loud about the issues that matter and the conversations that matter. I have so many other conversations that we have lined up for you guys, and we're going to release some of that on our YouTube channel as well. But you're not going to know about it if you don't like, subscribe, okay? And maybe even become a member if you decide to do so on our page. All you got to do is click that join button on our homepage to become a member of the channel. If you guys have any questions, thank you, LaShonda Mahalo. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting independent media. Linda said, no issues on my end. Fine, either, Linda. Thank you so much for letting us know. Okay. Y'all got to figure out what your internet provider was going on. Make sure you like and subscribe every single time, you guys. That's how we stay in business, by those of you joining us. And I'm going to continue to ask you and to remind you, because sometimes people need to hear it twice. Okay. Have a great Thursday, and we will see you right back here tomorrow at 11 a.m. Bye, y'all. Hey, cousins, thank you so much for watching. Your support is how we keep going. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. I know you hear me say it all the time, but all of that impacts the algorithm and folks finding out about the Tashara Parker Show. We want to make sure you never miss a show as well. We are live every day, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. and sometimes some special episodes. If you support the work that we're doing here, please consider becoming a member of the Tashara Parker Show. You can do all of this by visiting our YouTube page. Thanks so much for supporting the work that we're doing here. We could not do any of this without all of you. Thank you.